Welcome back to episode 4 of the Average Fantasy Cast. The whole crew is back here. Unfortunately, Joe is dealing with some technical difficulties. He was dealing with some bad weather. We're glad you're safe. Glad you're back, Joe. Back. He's quiet. He's back. You better get ready to argue because we're going to have a hot topic after hot topic after hot topic for the AFC South. But before we get started, guys, I have a confession. You know, I bashed Kenyon Drake for the past couple and I traded for him in our Dynasty League. Now, here's the caveat. So, Darius Geis was in the trade, and for those of you who know, he was released for domestic violence claims, which, again, it's a terrible thing. I traded Darius Geis to Spencer an hour before Darius Geis got released for Kenyon Drake. So I kind of struck gold there. I did have to give up Waller Baller, but I felt like Drake was worth it because he's my RB3 in that league. So I'm a fan of Kenyon Drake if he's my RB3, maybe RB2, not my RB1. So that's my only disclaimer, but I have to own up to myself with that. So, but yeah, so last week we got into some heated debate about the NFC West. We'll do the same thing with the AFC South. It's an interesting division, guys, when we look at it. You have Deshaun Watson at quarterback, but then after that, you got Ryan Tannehill, as John Gruden likes to say. I love when John Gruden calls him Ryan Tannehill. I love it. You have Ryan Tannehill, mustache Gardner Minshew. He's going to be the starter. The Nick Foles experiment did not work with Jacksonville. It's Minshew mania for the Jaguars. And then you got Philip Rivers joining the Colts. The Colts still trying to find their quarterback of the future. Obviously, Philip Rivers, he's at the twilight of his career. He's kind of the stopgap quarterback. So it's interesting, guys. I want to ask you, of those three quarterbacks, I know that they might not be your quarterback one, but who do you think of those three will have the best year and why?
I like Tannehill, personally. If you look, he didn't start until the 6th game last season. And his stats last year, he still had 2,700 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and only 6 picks. And you add 185 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on top of that. He had one of the highest downfield completion percentages in the league and one of the highest averages in total completion yards per attempt. You bring back A.J. Brown, who's going into his sophomore season, and his rookie year had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, with a decent outside threat with Corey Davis and good slot guy in Adam Humphrey. Not to mention he has King Henry in the backfield to open up any play action. So I definitely like Tannehill as a QB2 with QB1 potential with a whole season under his belt. And I really like Vrabel as a coach to keep them all motivated after almost making it to the Super Bowl last year.
Hard to argue that. I mean, yeah, he gets the contract. You wonder, did he just get lucky? Was it because teams didn't have any tape on him as a Titan?
Not just luck. Not just luck. If you look at him, even in the Dolphins, when he had complete seasons, even with Adam Gase, who was a terrible coach, his last healthy season with the Dolphins, he put up over 4,000 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 12 picks, and a rushing touchdown. So I definitely think that he's been consistent when healthy. So I definitely still like Tannehill.
No, I mean, that's completely fair. I just think for those who could be concerned that he just kind of cashed in, and we'll see what he's able to do when teams can scheme against them. I'm going to make kind of the unsexy pick here, and Gardner Minshew to me is the intriguing guy here. ADP at 26. Yeah. You roll your eyes, Bob. ADP is the 26th quarterback coming off the board. I think a full year with him getting a chance to be the guy. They add Jay Gruden as the offensive coordinator. I know that his track record as a head coach did not work, but he had some very good seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals and what he was able to do with Andy Dalton. I think Gardner Minshew is a bargain for where he's going. I think he's a sleeper QB2 option. You've got DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook. Of course, you've got Leonard Fournette. He's got options there. I think Gardner Minshew could be a guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the second best fantasy quarterback in this division.
Yeah, Tommy, I got to agree with you there. You know, I think he's one of the league's best stories.
Bob's not having it.
Minshew mania. I really want to sit here and say Rivers, you know, out of those three quarterbacks, Rivers is the guy to go to. I mean, I like him as a quarterback. I know He's only had one top 10 fantasy finish since 2013, and he doesn't really do anything with his legs. But I'm going to go with Minshew on this one. Minshew mania is where it's at, and he did rank 5th among all quarterbacks with 344 rushing yards. He can get it done on the ground. Like you said, adding Jay Gruden in there as the offensive coordinator. I think it's going to be interesting to see, what he does this year and what they do as an offense in general.
And so no love for Phillip Rivers.
I'll be the one that takes Phillip Rivers. You know me, I play the name game.
Hey, the name game, that game can only get you so far.
Yeah, well, I just like that all the young talent that's surrounding him, and I think he'll find a lot of he'll build some chemistry with Ty, kind of like he did with Keenan Allen.
Ty can stay on the field. He's busted up right now.
One unhealthy season.
But and then Jack Doyle, he kind of like fits into that like Hunter Henry type, and how much Phil loves his tight ends and his receiving backs. You got Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines, both of those two. I think they fit really well with him, and one of the best offensive lines in football. I mean, Phillip Rivers did not have a good offensive line in San Diego, in LA the past couple of years. So I think he's a rock solid option. I think the other two are too boom or bust. I think Tannehill is, Tannehill and Minshew, you really got to believe in them to take them.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Joe. I think Tannehill has better upside. He's mobile, on a better overall, more consistent
right,
backfield.
Philip's not going to run.
Yeah, and to your point, last year, even with one of the worst offensive lines in the league, Phillip Rivers still put up 4,600 passing yards and 23 touchdowns. And that's without him being able to scramble at all with one of the worst lines. I think that the receiving core is not as great in Indianapolis as it is out there in Los Angeles that he just had. But if he has time, he can pick apart any zone in the league. So I definitely like Rivers over Minshew, but not quite as much as Tannehill.
I think Phillip Rivers has seen his better days, but we'll stick with the Colts because, guys, obviously this is an intriguing backfield that we're going to be looking at going into the season the first couple of months. Is the debate between Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. Obviously, Marlon Mack has had a couple nice seasons with the Colts. He's been good. There's been some head-scratching weeks. He's a guy that it's like, man, like you wonder what could happen if he could really just reach his full potential. But nonetheless, the Colts take Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin, one of the best running backs in college football, arguably the best running back in college football, although we've got a couple Buckeye fans, including myself, that would argue that J.K. Dobbins was one of the best running backs in college football last year. Jonathan Taylor, guys, is going 23rd among running backs in ESPN leagues right now. Marlon Mack is going 42nd. I'm curious, do we like the rookie Jonathan Taylor, or are we sticking with Marlon Mack, the vet, for this upcoming season?
Personally, I'm sticking with Marlon Mack because I think, like I said, how much Phillip Rivers likes his receivers or his running backs. And then I think he can really fill into that Austin Eckler role, especially if Jonathan Taylor doesn't, get off to a hot start. I know we were just talking about it before that Frank Reich wants to go with the hot hand. He's going to give Marlon Mack the start to start the season, but he's going to go with the hot hand. And if Marlon Mack never gives Jonathan Taylor the opportunity, then I like Marlon Mack.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. Marlon Mack will definitely be the RB1 to start the season. But
I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, I think Jonathan Taylor, especially if you're in a dynasty league, is the move here. He's young and he's hungry. The Wisconsin boy.
That wasn't my question, though. I said for this year.
Dynasty league will definitely take Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, well, I mean, even this year, I'm still going with Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack might be better to start the season, but once Jonathan Taylor gets comfortable in that offense and is able to get going, I think he's going to be a beast. Maybe not a Saquon or a Zeke, but he's still going to be pretty good. And the only reason that I'm going with Jonathan over Mack is because, Mack's had injuries. Last 3 seasons, he's missed at least 2 games. And he's not that good as far as a receiving back goes. He's only had 31 total catches during the past 2 seasons. So,
yeah, but he still had almost 1,100 rushing yards. I mean, I get it. He's not the most efficient or sexy player in the league, but I don't know. I've seen this this story so many times with running backs and rookie running backs. Teams tend to just ease them in. I personally, I would take Marlon Mack at his value and his ADP at 42.
That's a big part
I
of
mean,
it.
Jonathan Taylor at 23. To me, that is just. I don't like Taylor's chances to emerge. I mean, that's him being drafted as maybe a low-end RB2 solid flex play. To me, I can't bank on that. I mean, there's other players where Taylor's going that you can for sure get that are going to give you good production. I just think for this year, I can't touch Jonathan Taylor where he's going.
I'd take both. This year, COVID, take them both. Jonathan Taylor at 23.
COVID,
if you're in a keeper league,
send it. Let's do it.
I mean, if you're in a keeper league and he ends up popping off late in the season, you can keep him for the next year and use Marlon Mack this whole year when he starts. In a COVID year, when an injury happens or if they do test positive and have to sit out for 2 weeks, if Jonathan Taylor gets his opportunity, if Mack gets COVID and runs away with it, Frank Reich's going to keep going with him. But I definitely could see a 2018 Derrick Henry style season happening with Jonathan Taylor, where the last 5-6 games of the season he's used more heavily when the starting back or the pass catching back, which was Dion Lewis, starts to get a little worn down, and he's going to be able to run rampant with that offensive line. But Marlon Mack last year put up, like you said, Tommy, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that was with missing 2 games. So going into this season, Marlon Mack is the starter, but if you can hang on to both and use one as a handcuff, I see every positive upside for that you could possibly think of.
This just I'm looking at the running backs that are going ahead of Marlon Mack, and I don't get it. Latavius Murray, I get it. He's a handcuff for Kamara. Come on. Matt Breida, yeah, he's fast. He's going to be on the Dolphins with Jordan Howard, but I'm taking Mack before him. Tevin Coleman, Bob, I don't care. I know what you're going to say about
I love Tevin.
Coleman, but give me Marlon Mack. Zach Moss from Buffalo, a rookie. Like, come on. Darrell Henderson, yeah, he could be a sleeper, but some of these guys that are going ahead of Marlon Mack, it's head scratching. But
like I said, if you can get both of them at their ADP, Jonathan Taylor and Mack, I'd do it. I'd take both of them if I can. If I already have a solid RB1, I think Marlon Mack at his worst the first half of the season is a low-end RB2, and Jonathan Taylor has potentially RB1 upside if he does pop off with that line.
Fair enough. Colts running back situation kind of in flux. Similar situation with the Houston Texans receiving core. They inexplicably trade DeAndre Hopkins. Bill O'Brien, I will rip this man on this podcast every single week for doing that. Pride thing, man. That's what it ultimately came down to. DeAndre Hopkins out. Brandon Cooks in. Randall Cobb in. Kenny Stills is back. Will Fuller is back. Of those 4 receivers, gentlemen, who do you think emerges as Deshaun Watson's go-to target this year? Who do you want go?
Will Fuller. Will Fuller. Every time. And let me tell you why.
Every time?
Out of those options? Well, because Brandon Cooks is going to get at least 2 concussions throughout the year and miss 4 games. So
and you don't think Will Fuller's going to pull a hammy?
He's going to be healthy this year. Because that's what Bill O'Brien...
Brandon Cooks won't be
because
healthy.
he's the one you picked, right?
Exactly. So let me just say, he already has chemistry with Deshaun Watson. When he is healthy, he can take the top off of a defense better than a lot of people in this league, minus Tyreek Hill and maybe DK Metcalf. And last year...
Oh, wait, who? Who'd you just say?
DK Metcalf. He can take a top off a defense. It doesn't mean he's better than Metcalf. Anyway, so last year, he missed 5 games. Will Fuller did. He's only 26 years old, and with missing 5 games, he had 670 yards and 3 touchdowns. With DeAndre Hopkins, who took over 30% of the offensive targets on that team.
Hey, you know who also is 26 years old? Brandon Cooks.
It doesn't matter. Brandon Cooks, he's
So why does it matter if Will Fuller's only 26?
Because Brandon Cooks is a journeyman. I don't like journeymen. I like people who can stay on a team, get chemistry with a quarterback.
It's not this man's fault that he got traded after traded.
If he was valuable for a team, he'd stick there, right? If Sean McVay doesn't like him, how the hell is Bill O'Brien going to use him?
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Give me Will Fuller. Give me a guy who has the potential to put up a 40 bomb each week. Give it to me.
Will Fuller has only scored more than 20 fantasy points last year twice. One of them was 21 and the other one is 53. Granted,
He's out here
53 is
saying
ridiculous,
40 bombs.
but
You look at it, he posts at least one game a year with over 40 points.
okay, and that's one game a year.
One game.
I'm
One
looking for
game.
consistency.
Fantasy championship.
Brandon
Stability.
Cooks is consistent. He's just as consistent as Will Fuller.
Who?
Brandon Cooks, just as consistently injured and smaller, and I think not as consistent.
Oh, wait a second. So you're going to make the small argument against Brandon Cooks, but you won't make it against Tyler Lockett?
Because Tyler Lockett's proven. He's proven.
Brandon Cooks isn't proven?
No,
Oh, my
he hasn't been consistently good since he's been with the
He's
Saints.
the first receiver in NFL history to have 1,000 receiving yards in 3 straight years and do it on 3 different teams because he got traded 3 different times. Get out of here with this.
He was a rock solid wide receiver too on the Patriots. I'll say that.
Well, he also had Tom Brady throwing him the damn football.
Yeah,
He made
Deshaun
Deion
Watson's pretty
Branch a
good,
wide
too.
receiver 1. Get out of here with that, Tommy or Joe. Jeez.
So let me clarify this about injured Brandon Cooks. So before last year, with the concussion issues, the previous 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, except for his rookie year, he played all 16 games. And he had over 1,000 yards. And had 65 receptions or more in all 4 years. And we're gonna say durability is an issue with Brandon Cooks. Come on.
I think he
I'm
just
just
got
saying.
lit up in the Super Bowl.
I
and
like Will
everyone
Fuller.
just-
You asked who I liked. I told you who I liked.
Well, that's fine. I'm not telling you can't like Will Fuller. I'm just saying if you're going to use the injury argument against.
Hey, I'm just gonna say you liked Will Fuller enough to trade David Montgomery for him. So
Hey, listen. Like I said, I felt like I needed Will Fuller. I felt like a first-round draft pick and a second-round draft pick on top of that was an attractive deal. I'm just saying that Will Fuller is not I wouldn't say he's the slam dunk pick in Houston. I like him. I
think he-
traded for him.
I mean,
But-
either way, no matter whatever receiver you're taking out of Houston, they're not a wide receiver 1 guy. They might be a wide receiver 2 guy, maybe, but definitely a flex option play.
All right, good. Just for reference, Will Fuller in ESPN is wide receiver 35, and Cooks is wide receiver 38. So for that value,
Criminal.
honestly,
Both
either of them.
are criminal. I like both. That's criminal. I'm sorry. That's highway robbery. You go into your ESPN draft league, if they're sitting there in the 10th or 11th round, or I guess maybe the 8th or 9th round because your league doesn't want them, you scoop. If you can scoop both of them, take them both.
I mean, yeah, like that's the argument with Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. Like
Take 'em
COVID
both.
year.
If you got the roster spots, take them all. Who cares?
I kind of like the idea if you can pick both, one will pan out.
Yeah. Then you might be able to
if
trade
you
the other
can.
one. Who knows?
It's true.
Brandon
And,
Cooks. I mean, he gets traded in the actual league. You might be able to trade him in your fantasy league.
Yeah.
But you know that the receiver situation in Houston, I'm just going to say this, has the potential to be a mess if if Cooks and Fuller were to go down. I think if you want to gamble on a receiver there, I think Randall Cobb is actually interesting. They did sign him, and I don't know why. They gave him $27 million for the next 3 years. So obviously you're paying the guy, you're going to use him. You're going to do something with him. So, hey, maybe Deshaun Watson likes him in the slot, and
He might be their emergency QB.
that too. So I think Randall Cobb could be, if you want to just throw
Deep
a
sleeper.
dart, if you're feeling lucky, you want to
Deep sleeper.
Round 15, you just need a pick. You already have your defense and kicker. Randall Cobb's out there.
Randall
Yeah.
Cobb. We'll stick with
Well,
receivers in the AFC South. Kind of want to break down potential. Who are we looking at here? You've got T.Y. Hilton with the Colts. You've got A.J. Brown with the Titans. I know a few of us have mentioned that A.J. Brown is another trendy pick. And then DJ Chark of the Jaguars. Guys, of those 3, who do you want to roster on your fantasy team this year?
Well, I guess I'll go
Somebody
first here.
Jeez.
I'm a big TY guy. I had him in our league last year. I have him in our league this year. I know he's been hurt and he's got some, injury. He's a very injury prone, but if he can stay healthy with Rivers now back there in the backfield, I do think that he could pop off and have a great year. So my guy, I'm going to pick TY here. I think Fuller might be a little too boomer bust, like we were just talking about. And Brown, he's going into his second year. I know he had a good end to last year, but I'm just not confident with Tannehill back there that he's going to be able to be consistent for 16 weeks.
Fleck down on the Titans. A lot of people really do like A.J. Brown. I'm with you, Fleck. I think he's a very good player, but I think he's he could be a very hit or miss player. I mean, keep in mind, guys. I mean, he was averaging 20 yards a catch last year. I mean, he was explosive play after explosive play. I mean, he was the definition of boomer bust for the first couple months of the year. Then Tannehill takes over, and A.J. Brown turns into the second coming of Randy Moss.
Wow.
Well, I mean, he took over games. I mean, he really did. But
Randy Moss, come on.
Listen, people make comparisons. I'm just saying.
He says you got A.J. Brown.
1,000 yards receiving on 52 receptions. He's a nice player, but to me, not a slam dunk. To me, you've got T.Y. Hilton going at 23rd. I think DJ Chark at 27. I get that the Jaguars are not a very good football team, but from a fantasy standpoint, I think DJ Chark could have a decent season. He had 73 receptions, went over 1,000 yards. He did kind of have an up and down season towards the end, but to me, it's like if I can get DJ Chark, you're getting the same amount of production as Brown, and you might have to pick Brown 2 rounds ahead. I think DJ Chark is getting a little bit slept on here. And again, Jay Gruden has mentioned that he wants to do more with him. He's 23 years old. He's young. I know A.J. Brown's young as well. I like DJ Chark. I like the Jags. I think a lot of people are not giving this team enough credit offensively. Give me DJ Chark at his value over
the other two.
Yeah,
I would go, honestly, fully healthy, I'd go T.Y. But right now, I'd probably go DJ Chark too, especially at that value, like wide receiver 27. And also because A.J. Brown, the wide receiver 16, I mean, you're just with the draft picks, you're anticipating wide receiver 2 production. He only did that for, at the end of the year last year. And also, I mean, what you said, he only had 52 receptions on the year. He was averaging 20 yards a catch. I mean, is that really what you want in fantasy if you're playing PPR? So I'll take just a lot of it based on value. I'll take Chark and then T.Y. and then A.J. Brown.
History shows it's tough to keep up that sort of yard per catch. So we'll see if A.J. Brown's volume in the passing game can increase. We'll stick with the Titans. Derrick Henry had a monster season last year. He helped win a lot of people in fantasy football leagues down the stretch. I mean, he had a torrid season, carried the ball over 300 times, 1,500 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns. He added another 2 receiving. Guys, he had 18 touchdowns last year. History tells us that he will not match that. Touchdown regression is coming. He just got the big contract. He's currently going 7th overall. He's in that second, he's at the top of that second tier of players, so to speak, after the likes of McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke. Now, McCaffrey's in his own world, but with him, Barkley, Elliott, Kamara, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry kind of starts that second tier of elite players. Do we like him as a late first-round pick? Are we nervous? Do we think he can have a similar season? What are we thinking with Derrick Henry?
My biggest concern is his workload.
Who cares? He gets better as the season goes out. What do you mean?
Yeah, but
Derrick
I mean,
Henry
the dude is
insane.
I'm not saying he's not.
He's a real-life Vin Diesel.
So even in PPR formats last year, when he had, how many catches did he have? Like 18 and 2 touchdowns last year. And PPR leagues, he was still the 5th best. He was still like the 5th best player at the position, and that was with 1,500 rushing yards and 16 rushing touchdowns, 18 total. But this coming season, they got rid of Deion Lewis. They don't have that pass catching back, and so it's going to give him more opportunities to catch out of the backfield. And I could definitely see them get him going downhill and start running some play action passes and just dump it out to him and just let him run rampant. Very few linebackers are going to make a one-on-one tackle with him in the open field, and maybe Jamal Adams is the only safety who could. And so I definitely am very high on Derrick Henry. I think he might honestly be a great option after Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, and Zeke. He might be my fourth off the board, minus Deion Lewis, now that he has a lot more upside in the passing game.
I don't know if I'm that bullish on him. I think, yes, he was a stud down the stretch. He was arguably the best fantasy running back outside of CMC down the stretch. Ran for over 100 yards in 5 of his final 6 games of the year.
I mean, if you had him in the fantasy playoffs, you pretty much were sitting back.
You know, I can see someone arguing for him over Dalvin Cook just with Dalvin Cook's injury history because Derrick Henry.
And he's on the Vikings. They're going to be dysfunctional.
Right.
You're not going to like Kirk Cousins. He's going to have a down year.
I can see that. I think I'm content with Derrick Henry. If I'm sitting there in the late first round and all the top backs are gone, I'm taking Derrick Henry before I take guys like Clyde or Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones. So I feel pretty good about taking Derrick Henry at the 7-8 range. But fantasy owners should be aware that he probably will not score 18 touchdowns again. It's a tough thing.
You don't know. You don't know.
History
He's King Henry.
He's not going to
King
score
Henry.
that much.
Yeah, I would say just expect that regression if you're going to. I would honestly take him I would take him. If I were 5th overall, I'd probably take him. Would it be close? But I would definitely expect some regression. But just with that, especially with the core of offensive linemen that are still there, especially Roger Saffold, Taylor Lewan, every time he runs left, as long as you have that old line, you have Mike Vrabel there, I think he's definitely worth he's going to be RB1.
Okay, so we all feel pretty good about Derrick Henry. You know, if you take him in the top 5, I'm not taking him over Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara personally. I can see maybe justifying Alvin Kamara, and I can see Dalvin Cook with the injury, but Derrick Henry should be another solid RB1 this year. Another running back who is interesting in the AFC South is Mr. David Johnson. Drafted him in just about every league last year, thinking he was going to have a beautiful bounce back season with Cliff Kingsbury, and then Cliff Kingsbury decided to kick my man David J to the curb. Just inexplicably has him active against the Giants. He's back. He's going to play. He carries the ball one time and then leaves, and Chase Edmonds goes off. I remember Matthew Berry went off on the Cardinals because the Cardinals were saying you should have started Chase Edmonds. Well, you know what? You shouldn't have lied about David Johnson, and you shouldn't have said he's active. And then
Tom, I remember
Berry.
You were so mad about that. That was ridiculous.
Last fantasy, that was just rough. I drafted Joe Mixon instead of Dalvin Cook. Fleck had Dalvin Cook, and who was your other running back?
DMC.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I scored like 200 or 300 more points than everybody else in the league total, and I still lost.
That is fantasy football sometimes.
I mean, David Johnson.
Last year, David J, he got off to a good start, but then he got hurt. Lost the job to Kenyon Drake, who is now a fantasy darling on my fantasy team.
I want you to apologize for
Kenyon Drake, if you ever watch this podcast, which, great podcast, but I think the chances of him seeing this are very slim. I am sorry. But we're talking about my man, David J. He's the number 1 running back now with Houston. It'll be interesting to see how the Texans offense goes. You have all the receivers. You've got Duke Johnson. You've got David J. It's going to be interesting. David Johnson currently going 40th overall. That puts him book end of the 5th round, could sneak, top end of the 5th, bottom end of the 4th. He's being drafted as an RB2 at running back 19. Gentlemen, do we like David J? A new team, a new start?
If you get him there, I think it could be a steal of the draft type year for David Johnson.
I know Bob used to love David J back in the day.
2016, he led me to a championship in 2 leagues. I love the guy. If you look at last year, he really didn't have that bad of a season for losing his job. He had over 700 total yards, 6 touchdowns, 140 fantasy points, and that was without touches in 5 games. And so his last season, his last full season, he had 243 points, 10th at the position, 940 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 446 receiving yards on 50 catches and 3 touchdowns. And I think he'll do much better than that in Houston. I mean, if you look at Houston last year, Carlos Hyde had over 1,000 rushing yards on that team. And so if you bring in David Johnson, who, in my opinion, is a better running back than Carlos Hyde, and he's a dual threat running back, I think that he definitely wasn't worth the trade that they gave up Hopkins to Arizona for. But I definitely think that he could tremendously help the ground attack on a team that has a terrible line for Deshaun Watson to keep him healthier all season long. I love David Johnson at that spot, and he could end up being an RB1 by the end of the year.
I love him at that spot if he stays healthy, but
That's the biggest concern.
I don't think he stays healthy. If I'm a betting man, and I don't,
Want to make a 2-cup bet?
I don't do that very often. You want to do a 2 cups bet?
Yeah.
Let's
David
do
Johnson
one.
will end up being a top 10 fantasy running back this year.
Oh.
Market, invest,
I will.
buy.
I will gladly take you on that 2 cups board bet. David Johnson will not finish as a top 10 fantasy running back. Put it on the board.
Could I get in on that action, Tommy? I'm on your side on this one.
Flex in on the action. Me and Flex.
That makes me even more confident, right?
Even more confident. Okay, Bob is in on David J. Joe, are you?
I'm in on David J. Not quite as much as Bob, but Bob, you bring up a lot of good points. I think.
Come on, you know what? We're all in on the bet. You've got to pick a side. Top 10 or not?
Not top 10.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. 3 against 1.
The lone
It'll
wolf.
be that much sweeter if Bob wins.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. I can't wait to look back at that Lockett Metcalf argument and rub that in your face too.
Whether or not, so like looking back at that trade of Hopkins for Johnson, whether or not it was an equal trade, I think the Texans made that deal with some plans for David Johnson. So he's going to see some volume. Like no matter what, whether it was worth it, whether wherever the value is, you see, they're going to give him some opportunities. If you're going to trade your best offensive player for this offensive player, then I think that they have some plans for him.
You're saying they're going to get their money's worth.
Yeah, he's going to touch the ball a lot. I'll say
that's a great way to look at it, Joe. It really is. I'm just very, very. I don't know, the injuries. It's too risky for me to put him on my team and potentially have someone out for the season.
So would you not want to draft Saquon after an injury-ridden sophomore campaign?
No, because Saquon's a different animal.
People said the same thing about David Johnson after 2015 and 2016.
They're not built the same.
2,000, almost 2,000 total yards.
They're not built the same.
Not
He led the way for McCaffrey to do it.
Saquon is built like a little tree stump. I mean, his legs are just sick.
Oh,
A little tree.
Saquon's like the perfect combination of like the best running backs physically, like ever. Like he has the legs of Walter Payton, like the vision of Emmitt Smith, and he has the elusiveness of Barry Sanders. Like if he can stay healthy and be consistent, he's gonna be insane.
Before we wrap up, we cannot talk about the AFC South. There's not a ton of star power in this division, but there's a guy that we cannot not talk about, and that's Leonard Fournette. Personally, for me, I think he is one of the most disrespected players in the NFL. I know that he's had his troubles off the field, and Jacksonville decided not to pick up his option this year, so he's playing in a contract year, gentlemen. Going as RB17, which I've said this a lot on this podcast today, that's absolutely criminal. I'm sorry.
I think Leonard Fournette can definitely fit into that RB1. He's like, I think he could definitely be an RB1.
He finished.
He's a workhorse.
I don't understand.
He played 88% of snaps, 87% of the carries that Jacksonville had, and he was targeted 19% of the time.
Who did the Jaguars add? Nobody. He was the number 7 fantasy football running back, ran for over 1,100 yards. Somehow, he had 76 receptions. He scored 3 touchdowns, and he was an RB1. Could you imagine if he scores like 8 or 9 touchdowns? He could flirt with being a top 5 fantasy running back. He is going as RB17. So let me ask you this. Bob, would you rather have David Johnson or Leonard Fournette?
I'm not gonna like my answer, buddy.
Oh my God.
David
Oh
Johnson.
my
And let me tell you
God.
why. Let me tell you
Oh
why.
my God.
What?
I wanna hear
So
it.
when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, in my opinion, they have two viable people on that entire offense, and that's DJ Chark and Leonard Fournette. So what I'm going to do as a defensive coordinator is stop that running attack and make Gardner Minshew try to win games.
But don't they have the same team as this year as last year? And Leonard Fournette was number 7. You're
Yeah,
telling
it's called getting film. A new quarterback, they don't know who he is. They don't know what they're going to do on
Gardner
offense.
Minshew was the quarterback for most of the year. This is almost the same exact team. You're telling
Okay,
me.
but look at what happened with Sean McVay after 1 year as the head coach on the Rams with Goff. They got film on him, and last year Goff was not good. Scheming is very important. Defenses in the NFL aren't going to be fooled on things 2 years in a row. And I think Fournette, sure, he might be able to run angry in a contract year, but there's a reason the team didn't pick up his 5th year, right? And so if you look at me, I like the potential with David Johnson, who's, in my opinion, going to be better than Fournette, especially at their average draft position.
I cannot
I don't know. Like,
No,
I mean,
but
Those are good points. I just
justify taking David Johnson, who's got Duke Johnson, who is going to be a factor on. He will play on third downs. He will play in the slot, whatever. They've got a ton of receivers. To
Duke Johnson was a terrible factor for Nick Chubb in Cleveland. Really hampered his fantasy value.
Nick Chubb's still solid. Nick Chubb doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
David Johnson does. Leonard Fournette is the one-man band in that backfield.
He's a beast.
Even if teams scheme against him, he only averaged 4 yards a carry.
And Tommy, he
He's
did
been
not score
double
less
than
than,
75 receptions.
and Tommy, he did not score
What I'm
less
saying is
than
David
10
Johnson had more
fantasy
touchdowns
points
last year.
other than one time last year.
So
And what's your point? David Johnson scored more touchdowns, and he was.
So he's going to a team that traded DeAndre Hopkins for him. Like Flex said, they're going to have a use for him, and they're going to literally scheme specific parts of their offense to run through David Johnson to help protect Deshaun Watson. I like David Johnson's upside at his draft position.
Since when does Deshaun Watson need to be protected? Deshaun Watson is the heart and soul of that offense.
He needs to
Not
be protected
David
because he
Johnson.
gets knocked around every game. He's been the only quarterback who was sacked more than him last year was Kyler Murray.
And David Johnson's just going to magically fix that?
If they can pound the rock with a running back more consistent than Carlos Hyde, yes.
I think he's going to get all
you're
that
saying
volume.
the Texans had the second most sacks last year against them.
Yeah, either them or Russell Wilson. They were top 5 at least.
So it doesn't sound like their offensive line is that good. And as
That's
far as
what-
I'm concerned, they didn't make any huge.
Pass blocking is different
for
than
that
run
line.
blocking. Like Carlos Hyde ran for 1,000 yards on that team last year, and Deshaun Watson still got sacked a lot.
You cannot justify to me taking an injury-prone David Johnson who's got way more competition on an
I said I like them better at the average draft position. I like David Johnson better than Leonard Fournette where they're being drafted.
It's a difference of 7 picks, and Leonard Fournette was a RB1 last year and scored 3 touchdowns.
But if David Johnson didn't get his job taken away from him, he easily would have been in the same category.
Why did he get his job taken away from him?
He missed one game against the Giants and Cliff Kingsbury.
Why did he miss that
in my opinion,
game?
Not a great
He was
coach.
hurt.
He was injured.
It's one game, but then he was perfectly fine. They just didn't play him.
That's all it takes is one game to lose your just starting job.
I don't understand how you can.
I
Leonard.
think David Johnson is going to get he's going to get a lot of reps. He's going to touch the ball, but I don't think he's going to be as efficient as he was in 15-16. So I think he is RB2, but like RB1 territory, no, for David Johnson.
Hey, I like people who can find the end zone.
And
The fact that David Johnson did more last year than Fournette is insane to me.
And what's insane to me is that Leonard Fournette scored 3 stinking touchdowns and was a RB1 in fantasy football because he had 76 receptions. He will find the end zone more. That is how football works. When guys don't score one year,
We'll
it
see.
increases the next.
Look at Julio.
You know what? We're making another board bet on this. Leonard Fournette will be a better fantasy football running back than David Flippin' Johnson.
Okay, I'll take that.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm a David Johnson homer, man.
Good.
I love the guy.
Yeah, you know what? I was a huge David Johnson homer last year, and that man burned me to my core.
Well, there's a reason I didn't draft him last year because I didn't like Cliff Kingsbury.
Leonard Fournette, obvious play here.
Hey, you know who Kip?
If you're watching at home,
you know who he loves now? He loves Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, 4 games. 4 games. That's all he had.
And then it'll be the Chase Edmonds show.
And yeah, Kenyon Drake will get hurt one time and lose his job, and then they'll trade him. That's what Cliff Kingsbury does, I guess. Although he runs 4 verts every other play. Like, come on.
We'll see if he's a kind of coach that says, "What have you done for me lately?" kind of guy. But it'll be interesting. So, fun debating the AFC South with you guys. E4 coming to an end here. 2 Cups, proud partner. I gotta get on Griff. He's got to come up with the average fantasy cast merchandise. We need it. We need some merch. We need some T-shirts. We need some hats. We need some flags like that. That'd be pretty cool. So I'll get on Griffin more about that, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, follow 2 Cups on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and of course follow us on Twitter and subscribe with us on YouTube. So it should be a lot of fun. We'll decide what we talk about on E5. We'll go back to the AFC. Might be time to debate the AFC North, our beloved Cleveland Browns. We'll see, but haven't made anything official, but it should be fun. For the Average Fantasy Cast team, have a good one.